I want to confess, I love my job. I love my job. Do I sound believable? Because really, I really do love my job. But there are times when our job is absolutely insane. Students can do things and say things that just leave us scratching our heads. Like the time a social studies teacher wanted to talk about the State of the Union address that was the night before, and so he asks his students how many had seen it, and a boy raises his hand and said he couldn't watch it because some guy was on every station. True story. Or the English teacher who's going to give the acuity test, and a student raises her hand and says, "Teacher, I don't need to take this test." And when asked why, she says, "Well, I'm already a cutie." Or then sometimes there are things that happen that are totally out of our control and make us lose total control of the classroom. Like the time a real chicken, walked into a math teacher's classroom. What do you do with that? One of her students suggested they stop, drop, and roll. I don't know if that worked. And then you can't overlook the pace at which we run. We race to get through lesson plans and academic standards. We race to get to the bus loading area because we forgot we had duty that day. We race to gather homework for the parent who's going to be there in 15 minutes and needs homework for the week because they're going on vacation. We can manage dozens of classroom logs and data sheets, but we can't manage ourselves well enough to find time to eat more than 2 bites of our lunch, let alone go to the bathroom. Am I right? And I'm sure you've had those unmotivated students, those students who you feel like you spent more time on a lesson than they did, or the student who didn't listen and then asks a question over something that you have been over at least 8 times. And then you've written test after test and students haven't even taken a book home to study, and that shows in their data. And then you have the students, and maybe even sometimes the parents, who call in and ask for extra credit for the regular credit they didn't get the first time. And here's the rub. You're being evaluated for all of this. It's enough to make anyone go to Starbucks and find out if the insurance really is as good as they say it is. But you think about it, and deep down, you know that you love buying office supplies. You love buying office supplies. You love color coding your seating charts. You love Jean Day, and come on, admit it, you love Spirit Wear. So you put aside your thoughts of being a barista because deep down you know that even though it sounds cliche, you know what you do matters. And then you think about students like Dakota, who is a boy in your class who just would rather sit there and draw and make noise, loud noise. But at the end of the period, Dakota comes up to you with a picture, and he has drawn the very thing that you have spent the period talking about, even with detail that you've spoken about. And what makes it even more remarkable is that Dakota is a special needs student with very low verbal communication skills. But he got it, and he figured out a way to share it. And then there are students like Ethan, who coming into a math teacher's classroom did not know his basic math facts. Well, his math teacher worked with him every week using reflex math, and Ethan worked on his own. And I am proud to report that Ethan now knows all of his math facts, and he's proud, and he's confident. I'm sure you have students like this, students that when you think about them, they bring a smile to your face. What's that student's name? Let's say him out loud on 3. 1, 2, 3. please hear me when I say this. Those same students think the same thing about you. They love coming to your classroom. They would rather be in your room at lunchtime than in the cafeteria. They get you. They say hi to you. They know that you are more than a robot. You're a person that doesn't live at school. You know, I bet if you think about it, when you were a student, you have teachers that still to this day make you smile. For me, that was my third grade teacher, Mrs. Mitchell. When I was in elementary school, I was a struggling reader. Things looked backwards, they came out backwards. I hated reading out loud. We had to do it. And the thought of bump, I'm sure bump was going to be the death of me. But Mrs. Mitchell was patient. She helped me read the words, when I'm sure it would have been so much easier and quicker for her to read the words for me. Mrs. Rose is a teacher that makes another friend of mine smile. He was actually held back by her one year. And when it would have been easier for Mrs. Rose to place him in a different classroom, she kept him the next year. And she worked with him every day. And she gave him leadership roles in the classroom. And that's exactly what he needed to have the confidence to excel academically in the years to come. Mr. Blythe is a teacher that makes another friend of mine smile. He was her senior composition teacher and made them write and write and write. And even though it was grueling and difficult, she learned the importance of a good work ethic. And more importantly for her, she learned about the joy of writing as a creative outlet. And even to this day, she instills that in her students. So what is it about that teacher that makes you smile? Is it an assignment they did? Was it a personality trait? Was it the way that they made you feel valued? Ms. Fogle, if you're in the audience today, I want you to know that Aubrey thinks the world of you. She was not confident coming into your English class. She felt like she had a really low reading ability. But you helped her. You helped her reach her goals, and for that, she says thank you. Mrs. Roach, I would like for you to know that Brittany absolutely loved your chemistry class. Yeah, it was hard. But she knows that in your class, she was learning more than chemistry. She was learning life skills that she knows will be important to her in the years to come. And for that, she says thank you. Mrs. Voelker, I know this is going to make you laugh, but Donnie says thank you. He knows he was a holy terror in your classroom. He knows he frustrated you, but he also knows that you never gave up on him. You had high expectations for him when almost everyone else in his life had low ones. And for that, he says, thank you. I could go on and bring student after student up here to say amazing things about you, and you know that's true because you know that you have invested in them and poured into their lives. But I also know that sometimes it's not quite as easy to see those success stories. Sometimes there are days when even Farrell will sing he's not so happy. So for those times, I would like to offer a few coping mechanisms. Treat them like a lesson plan that you bought online and tweak it to fit your own personality, but try them in some way, shape, or form. First, focus on the wins. Don't allow yourself to be defined by your failures. In my classroom, I have a happy wall. That's what I call it. And when I've had a bad day or feel like things aren't going my way, I look at this wall. This wall is filled with all kinds of things from my own kids, but also lots of things that my students have given me over the years. I have handprints, and I have pictures from art class, and I have those little bracelets that they make out of those rubber bands that you find all over your classroom floor. My board is filled with things that they've given me. And when I feel like I've had a bad day or things aren't quite going my way, I look here, and I focus on what went right. My next piece of advice for you would be to focus on the process. You know, when a mountain climber is starting an ascent, he doesn't start with the peak in his eyesight. He focuses on the next spot on his journey. And that's the reality in our job. We won't necessarily see our students reach the peak, but we will certainly be a step along the way. For example, there was a student, his name was Marcellus, and he was an EVSC student, and in high school, he would call himself a thug. He didn't apply himself the first 2 years of high school, and he knows that. His teachers didn't give up on him, but he wasn't ready for that. But something happened to him his junior and senior year, and he started to realize that he had potential. And he started to apply himself. And today, Marcellus is actually a pastor in inner city Chattanooga. He is a gifted musician, he's a loving husband, and he's a great father. He's also a key leader in that city's unification efforts. Marcellus's teachers didn't see him reach the peak, but they certainly helped him get there. The last thing I want to leave with you here is for you to focus on other dimensions in your life. You're more than a teacher. You're someone's spouse. You're someone's parent. You're someone's child. You're someone's friend. And if you believe like I do, then you're someone with a soul, with a greater spiritual purpose. Feed that person. It's okay to put the stack of papers aside for the night. It's okay to go to bed early. It's okay to read a book, a non-teaching strategy book. It's okay to engage your spouse in meaningful conversation not centered around the rubric that you just wrote or an evaluation that you're going through, but meaningful life conversation. You owe it to yourself to find that balance in your life because you have too many people counting on you otherwise. You know, teaching can often be a very thankless job until somebody actually remembers to say it to you. And today I get to be that person. I get to say thank you for what you do. Thank you for being more than their teacher. Thank you for being their counselor. Thank you for being their advocate. Thank you for being their voice of reason when they probably don't have one anywhere else. There is absolutely no eye observation that can capture everything you do for your students. And there is certainly no number that can be assigned to you that measures your true value. So again, thank you for what you do.